I need you to hear me when I say this. There are some rooms you've walked into smiling, laughing, holding it all together, and nobody in that room had any idea that you were bleeding on the inside. There are some nights you've laid in the dark, staring at the ceiling, crying a kind of cry that didn't even have sound to it, because the pain went too deep for noise. And you started to wonder, does anybody see me? Does anybody know what this is costing me? But I came to tell somebody today, he saw you in that room, he saw you on that floor, he saw you in that car when you gripped that steering wheel and asked him, how long? He didn't just see your praise, he saw your pain. And not only did he see it, he never once looked away. Because the God we serve is not a God who only shows up for your highlight reel. He is a God who sits with you in the chapters you'd never let anybody else read. He is acquainted, not just aware, but acquainted with your grief. So before you convince yourself that you've suffered in silence and heaven hasn't noticed, I need you to open your heart today, because God knows your pain, even when no one else does. There is something you have mastered that nobody ever taught you. You learned it somewhere between the first time your heart broke and the moment you realized that not everybody deserves to know about it. You learned how to hide. Not the kind of hiding where you disappear. No, you became an expert at the other kind, the kind where you show up fully, you laugh loudly, you serve generously, you answer, I'm fine, so convincingly that even the people closest to you never once thought to question it. You became so good at carrying it that people forgot you were carrying anything at all. And the dangerous thing about being strong is that the world will let you be strong forever. Nobody checks on the person who always seems okay. Nobody pulls aside the one who keeps everybody else together. Nobody thinks to ask the helper if they need help. So you just kept going. You kept showing up. You kept pouring out, and somewhere deep inside, in a place you don't let people visit, you were drowning in something that had no name, or maybe it had too many names. Grief, rejection, shame, loneliness, betrayal, disappointment so deep it rewired the way you trust people. And you put it in a room inside yourself and you locked the door, not because you didn't want help, but because you had already learned the hard way that not everyone who asks, what's wrong, is equipped to handle the real answer. You had already experienced what it felt like to be vulnerable with the wrong person, to open up and be met with silence or worse, judgment. So you decided it was safer to carry it alone. You decided that keeping it hidden was the same as keeping yourself protected. But here is what nobody tells you about the things you hide. They don't stay quiet just because you locked the door. They talk to you at 2 a.m. when the house is still and there's nothing left to distract you. They show up in the way you flinch when someone gets too close. They leak out in your reactions, in your triggers, in the moments when something small happens and your response is so much bigger than the moment deserved. Because it was never really about that moment. It was about everything you've been storing, everything you've been pretending wasn't there. And you have been so tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind of tired that lives in your bones, in your spirit, the kind that comes from performing okayness for so long that you can barely remember what it felt like before you had to perform it. You have been tired of holding your face together in public and then falling apart the second you're alone. Tired of being the strong one, tired of people only knowing the version of you that has it together, because that version is exhausting to maintain, and she is not the whole truth of who you are. The whole truth is that you have walked through some things that would have broken people who didn't have your kind of resilience. The whole truth is that some of what you carry, you never asked for. It was handed to you, it was done to you. It found you in a season when you were already depleted, and it did not care. The whole truth is that there are wounds in you that are still healing, scars that still ache when the weather changes, places in your heart that you are still trying to figure out how to rebuild. And you have been doing all of that privately, quietly, without an audience, without applause, without anyone even knowing that a battle was happening. But I need you to understand something that changes everything. The fact that no one else saw it does not mean it went unseen. The fact that you hid it does not mean it was hidden, because there is a God who does not need you to unlock the door for him. He already knows what's in the room. He knew before you put it there. He watched you carry it in. He saw the weight of it on your shoulders before you even fully understood what you were carrying. And not once, not for a single moment, did he look away. He is not a God who only meets you in your Sunday morning moments. He is not impressed only by your praise and unaware of your pain. He is not so high and lifted up that your private suffering doesn't reach him. No, he is close. Closer than the shame that told you to hide it. Closer than the fear that told you nobody would understand. He is the God who sees. And that name is not just a theological concept. It is a personal promise. It means that in your most hidden moment, in your most private pain, in the version of yourself that you would never post, never perform, never present to the world, he is there and he sees. And what he sees does not make him turn away. This is the part that is hard to receive when you have been conditioned by people who couldn't handle your full story. When people have seen your mess and used it against you. When vulnerability has cost you, it becomes almost impossible to believe that being fully known could be safe. But he is not like the people who let you down. He sees the depth of your pain and he does not love you less. He sees the full weight of what you've been carrying and he does not walk away. He sees every layer, every wound, every wall you built and why you built it. And his response is not rejection. His response is presence. His response is the kind of knowing that is wrapped in tenderness, the kind of seeing that is inseparable from care. You are not too broken for his attention. You are not too messy for his gaze. You are not too far gone for him to find you in the hiding place you built for yourself. There is a particular kind of pain that comes not just from what you went through, but from going through it without anyone noticing. There is a grief that lives inside the grief, and it is the grief of invisibility. It is the H that comes when you are sitting in a room full of people who love you, and not one of them knows that you are quietly falling apart. It is the loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being surrounded and still feeling unseen. And that specific kind of pain has a way of making you question everything. It makes you question your worth. It makes you question your relationships. It makes you question whether the people in your life actually know you, or whether they only know the version of you that you carefully curated for their comfort. And the silence of suffering alone has a voice. It speaks. It tells you things in the dark that it could never say out loud in the daylight. It tells you that if the people who are supposed to know you don't see your pain, then maybe your pain doesn't matter. It tells you that if nobody is asking about the weight you're carrying, then maybe you were meant to carry it alone. It whispers that the fact that no one has noticed is itself a message about your value, about your place, about whether anyone would actually show up if they really knew. And you have been fighting those whispers. Some days you win. Some days you don't. Some days you almost believe them. But I need to interrupt those whispers today with a truth that is louder than everything they have been telling you. Your suffering was never invisible just because human eyes missed it. There is a difference between being unseen by people and being unseen by God. And that difference is everything. People are limited. People are distracted. People are sometimes so consumed by their own hidden pain that they genuinely cannot see yours. People miss things. People overlook things. People sometimes don't ask the right questions or show up in the right ways, not because they don't care, but because they are human and humans are finite and broken and incomplete. But God has none of those limitations. He does not get distracted. He does not overlook. He does not get so consumed with someone else's situation that he loses track of yours. He is not managing a limited amount of attention that has to be divided among too many people. He is fully, completely, entirely present to you, to your specific pain, in your specific moment, in the specific silence that you have been suffering in. And while the people around you were going about their lives, completely unaware of what was happening inside you, heaven was not unaware. Heaven was not moving on. Heaven was not distracted by something or someone more important. Because here's what you need to understand about the nature of God. He is not a God who only responds to what is visible. He is not waiting for you to make your pain public before he acknowledges it. He is not requiring you to fall apart in front of witnesses before he takes it seriously. The prayers you prayed that nobody heard, he heard. The tears you cried in private, he collected. The moments when you were too broken to even form words, and all you could do was sit in the silence of your own hurting. He was in that silence with you, and he understood every single thing that you couldn't say. There is a scripture that says he is familiar with suffering, not acquainted from a distance, not aware in a general vague sense, familiar. And familiar means close. Familiar means personal. Familiar means he has been near enough to suffering, near enough to your suffering, to know it intimately. And that intimacy means that your silent suffering never landed in an empty room. Every single thing you went through that nobody witnessed, he witnessed. Every single thing you carried that nobody helped you carry, he saw the weight of it. Every single night you cried yourself to sleep without anyone knowing, he was there in that room with you. And I need you to sit with that for a moment, because some of you have been operating under a lie that says if nobody sees it, it doesn't count. If nobody validates it, it wasn't that serious. If nobody showed up for you in it, then maybe you didn't deserve to be shown up for. And that lie has been doing damage in you for a long time. It has been making you minimize your own pain. It has been making you dismiss the very real, very valid, very significant things you have been through, because the world didn't stop moving, and the people around you didn't seem to notice, and so you convinced yourself that maybe it wasn't as bad as it felt. But it was. What you went through was real. What you felt was real. What it cost you was real. And the fact that it happened in silence, the fact that it happened without an audience, the fact that it happened in rooms that nobody else entered, none of that makes it less significant. None of that makes it less worthy of being acknowledged. None of that means you were supposed to just absorb it and move forward without anyone ever bearing witness to what it took out of you. God bears witness. When the people who should have shown up didn't show up, he was there. When the community that should have caught you missed you, he didn't miss you. When you suffered in a silence so deep that you started to wonder if heaven itself had gone quiet. It hadn't. He was speaking. He was present. He was near. And your silent suffering was never, not for one single moment, invisible to the one who matters most. There is something uniquely isolating about pain that has no witness. There is something that happens to the human soul when it goes through something significant, something heavy, something life-altering. And nobody is there to see it. Nobody is there to say, I saw what that cost you. Nobody is there to acknowledge that what happened, happened, and that it mattered, and that you survived something that deserved to be recognized. And without that witness, without that acknowledgement, something in us begins to wonder if the pain was even real. Something in us begins to quietly, almost imperceptibly, start to doubt our own experience. Because we are wired for witness. We are wired to need someone to see us in our suffering, not to fix it necessarily, but just to see it. Just to be present with us in it. Just to confirm that what we are going through is real and that we are not alone in it. And when that witness doesn't come, when you go through something and the people around you either don't notice or don't respond or don't show up the way you needed them to, it creates a wound that sits underneath the original wound. Because now you are not just dealing with the thing that happened. You are dealing with the thing that happened, plus the silence that followed it. You are dealing with the pain plus the absence of anyone to help you carry it. And that combination is its own kind of suffering. That combination produces its own kind of damage. It makes you feel like your pain is a burden that even the people who love you couldn't be bothered to carry with you. And so you learn to carry it alone. And carrying it alone taught you to be self-sufficient in your suffering in a way that was never meant for you. Because you were never designed to process pain in complete isolation. You were never built to absorb everything silently and keep moving without anyone ever acknowledging what you went through. That is not strength. That is survival. And there is a difference between the two. Strength is being supported and still standing. Survival is having no support and still standing. And so many of us have been surviving when we were supposed to be supported. So many of us have been white, knuckling it through seasons that were supposed to have community, that were supposed to have covering, that were supposed to have someone walking alongside us. And instead we walked alone, and we told ourselves that was okay. We told ourselves we were fine. We told ourselves we didn't need anyone to witness it because we had already gotten through it. But the getting through it without a witness left something unresolved. It left something unacknowledged. And unacknowledged pain does not disappear. It goes underground. It finds other ways to express itself. It shows up in how you relate to people, in how much you trust, in how quickly you pull back when something feels too vulnerable, in how you keep even the people who love you at a careful, managed distance because somewhere in you there is still a record of all the times you needed someone to see your pain and nobody came. And that record has been quietly shaping your life in ways you are still trying to understand. But here is the truth that has the power to begin to undo some of that damage. The truth that has the power to reach down into that unacknowledged place and begin to bring something like healing to it. And the truth is this: the pain that went unwitnessed by people was never unwitnessed by God. Every single moment of suffering that happened without a human audience, without a person present, without anyone to say, I see what you're going through, God was there. And not just there in the way that we say God is everywhere, in some general, cosmic, omnipresent sense. They're in the specific, personal, tender sense. They're the way a father is there. They're the way someone who loves you deeply and knows you completely is there. Present to the details, present to the weight of it, present to what it was doing to you on the inside, even when you're outside held together. And he didn't just observe it from a distance. He didn't watch it the way you watch something happen to someone else, with sympathy but without real connection. He entered into it. He was moved by it. The God who created you is not unmoved by your suffering. He is deeply, genuinely, personally moved by what you go through. And that means that every moment of pain that you experienced without a human witness was experienced in the presence of someone who felt the weight of it alongside you, who understood the full depth of what it cost you, who knew not just what was happening on the surface, but what was happening in the layers underneath, in your heart, in your faith, in the places where you were quietly wondering if you were going to make it through. And there is something else about God being witness to your pain that is different from human witness. When a person witnesses your suffering, they witness it through the filter of their own experience, their own limitations, their own capacity for empathy, which is real but finite. They can understand what you're going through only as far as their own experience allows them to understand it. But when God witnesses your suffering, he witnesses it completely. He misses nothing. He minimizes nothing. He does not look at what you went through and decide that it wasn't that serious, or that you should be over it by now, or that other people have had it worse. He sees it in its full weight, its full complexity, its full impact on your life and your soul and your sense of self. And that kind of witnessing, complete, unfiltered, without judgment, without comparison, without limitation, is the kind of witnessing that actually has the power to heal something. Because when you are truly seen, truly known, truly witnessed in your pain by someone who has the capacity to hold all of it without flinching, something in you begins to exhale. Something in you that has been braced for a very long time begins to slowly, carefully release. Because you no longer have to manage how much of your pain is visible. You no longer have to edit yourself to protect someone else from the full weight of what you carry. You can be completely known and completely held at the same time. And God has been that witness for you even in the moments you didn't know He was there. Even in the moments you felt most alone, most unseen, most unacknowledged, He saw, He knew. He was present to every detail of what you were going through, and not one moment of your suffering escaped His attention. There is a version of your story that you have never told anyone. Not your closest friend, not the person you trust most in this world, not even the people who were physically present during some of your hardest seasons. Because being present in a moment and truly understanding what that moment did to you are two completely different things. There are chapters in you that have never been read out loud. There are details that you have carefully, intentionally left out of every version of your testimony that you have ever shared. There are things that happen not just on the outside, but on the inside. Thoughts you had, fears you wrestled with, moments of doubt so dark that you would never say them in a room full of people. Places where your faith cracked and your hope thinned, and you were closer to giving up than anyone around you ever knew. And you have become skilled at giving people enough of your story to satisfy their curiosity without ever giving them the parts that would actually make them understand. You have learned how to share your testimony in a way that is true but incomplete. You talk about the valley, but you don't talk about what the valley made you think about yourself. You talk about the hard season, but you don't talk about the night in that season when you made a decision out of your pain that you have never fully forgiven yourself for. You talk about what you went through, but you carefully edit out the parts that feel too raw, too shameful, too complicated, too human. The parts that don't fit neatly into a narrative of triumph and survival. And so the people in your life know a version of you, a real version, but not the complete version, not the unedited version, not the version that includes the chapters you keep locked away. And there is a loneliness that comes with being only partially known. There is an exhaustion that comes from always being the editor of your own story, always deciding in real time how much is safe to share, always managing the gap between who people think you are and who you actually are in your most private, most honest, most unguarded moments. It is tiring to maintain that gap. It is isolating to live in it. And the longer you live in it, the more distant you can begin to feel, even from the people who love you. Because love that is based on an incomplete version of you can start to feel hollow. Because somewhere in you, you know that they love who they think you are, and you are not entirely sure they would love who you actually are if they knew everything. But here is where the story shifts. Here is where everything changes. Because while there is a version of your story that you have never told anyone, there is not a version of your story that God does not already know. There is no chapter you have kept from Him. There is no detail you have successfully hidden. There is no edited version that He has accepted in place of the real one, because He was there for the real one. He was there in the moment before you made the decision you regret. He was there in the thought you have never spoken out loud. He was there in the part of your testimony you always skip over. He was there in the crack in your faith and in the depth of your doubt and in the night when you were closer to the edge than anyone ever knew. And He didn't just observe those moments from a distance. He knew what was happening inside you in those moments with a level of intimacy and precision that no human being has ever had access to. He knew not just what you did, but why you did it. He knew not just what happened, but what it felt like to be you while it was happening. the fear underneath it, the wound that drove it, the desperation or the exhaustion or the grief that was operating in you beneath the surface of what anyone could see. He knew the whole story, the unedited, unfiltered, unmanaged, uncurated version of your story, and he has always known it. And I need you to understand what it means that he knows the parts you never told, because we have been trained by experience, by disappointment, by the ways people have responded when we've been too honest, too vulnerable, too real, to believe that being fully known is dangerous. We have learned that there is a cost to letting people see too much. We have paid that cost before, and we are not eager to pay it again. And so we manage our stories. We control our narratives. We decide very carefully what gets shared and what stays hidden, because we have evidence that full disclosure leads to full exposure, and full exposure leads to being hurt. But God knowing your full story is not the same as a person knowing your full story. Because when a person knows the parts of you that you are not proud of, there is always the possibility that they will use it against you, that they will see you differently, that they will pull back their love or their respect or their trust. But God already knows the parts you are not proud of, and his love has not changed. He already knows the chapters you would never read out loud, and he has not withdrawn. He already knows the version of you that exists before the editing, before the curating, before the careful management of your own image. And that version, the rawest, most honest, most unpolished version of who you are is the version that he loves completely. There is something profoundly healing about being fully known and fully loved at the same time. Because most of us have experienced one or the other, but rarely both together. The people who know us fully don't always love us fully. And the people who love us fully often don't know us fully. They love a version of us, a presentation of us, a highlights reel of us. But God holds both simultaneously. He knows every single thing about you, every mistake, every motive, every moment of weakness, every secret, every hidden chapter, every part of your story that has never been spoken. And his love for you is not conditional on any of it. That means you do not have to earn his understanding by presenting yourself correctly. You do not have to manage his perception of you. You do not have to give him the edited version, because he already has the unedited one, and he is not waiting for you to clean it up before he shows up for you. He meets you in the unedited version. He works in the chapters you haven't shared. He redeems the parts of your story that you thought were too far gone, too complicated, too shameful to ever be turned into anything good, and the parts of your story that you have never told. He not only knows them, he has not forgotten them. He has not moved on from them the way time sometimes forces us to move on before we have actually healed. He holds them with care. He holds them with the kind of attention that says your full story matters to him. Not just the parts that are easy to hear, not just the parts that make people cheer, but all of it, the messy parts, the complicated parts, the parts that don't resolve neatly, the parts that are still in process, the parts that you are still trying to make sense of yourself. There is a feeling that has followed you through more seasons than you would like to admit. It is not always loud. It does not always announce itself, but it is there, underneath the business, underneath the routine, underneath the relationships and the responsibilities and the roles you play every single day. It is the feeling that at the deepest level, in the most honest part of your experience, you have been alone. Not alone in the literal sense necessarily, because many of you have been surrounded by people your entire life, but alone in the way that matters most. Alone in your pain, alone in your processing, alone in the private interior world where the real version of your life actually happens. And that feeling of aloneness has been so consistent, so persistent, so present across so many different seasons and circumstances that at some point you stopped questioning it and started accepting it as simply the truth of who you are and how your life works. And the dangerous thing about accepting aloneness as your truth is that it begins to shape every single thing about how you move through the world. It shapes how you enter relationships with one foot already out the door, because you have already decided, before anything even goes wrong, that eventually you will be left to handle it alone anyway. It shapes how you ask for help, which is to say you don't, or you do it so reluctantly and so minimally that the help you receive never actually reaches the depth of where you need it. It shapes how you process hard things, privately, internally, in the small hours of the night when nobody is watching, working through things alone because aloneness in your suffering has become so normalized that you would not even know how to do it differently. It shapes how you relate to God. Because if aloneness has been your consistent human experience, it is almost impossible not to project that onto your relationship with Him, to assume that even He is somehow distant, somehow unavailable, somehow present in theory, but absent in the moments when you needed Him most. But I need to speak directly to that assumption today, because it is one of the most damaging lies that prolonged suffering in silence can produce in a person. The lie that says because you felt alone, you were alone. The lie that says because no human presence showed up adequately for you in your pain, no presence showed up at all. The lie that says the loneliness you experienced is an accurate reflection of your actual reality, rather than a feeling produced by circumstances and reinforced by disappointment. Because feelings, as real and as valid as they are not always accurate reporters of truth. And the feeling of aloneness, no matter how deep it runs, no matter how long it has been your companion, is not the same as the fact of aloneness. And the fact, the actual unchangeable, unshakable fact, is that you were never as alone in your suffering as you felt. Not in the season that broke you, not in the night that almost took you out, not in the moment when you looked around and there was nobody there, not in the years of quiet, grinding, invisible pain that you carried without anyone to help you carry it. In every single one of those moments, in every single one of those seasons, there was a presence with you that was not dependent on whether you felt it or recognized it or had the capacity in your pain to perceive it. God was there. Not was there the way we say things to make people feel better. Was there in the most literal, most real, most active sense of the word. And I want to talk about what His presence in your aloneness actually means, because I don't want this to stay abstract. I don't want this to be something that sounds beautiful, but doesn't reach the place in you that actually needs to be touched. Because some of you have heard God is with you so many times that the words have lost their weight. You have heard it in church. You have read it in scripture. You have said it to other people, and yet in your own private moments of suffering, it has not always felt like enough. It has not always translated into the felt sense of being accompanied, being supported, being held. And I understand that. I am not dismissing the gap between the theological truth and the lived experience. That gap is real and it is painful, and it deserves to be acknowledged. But I want to invite you to consider that the gap between the truth of His presence and your felt experience of it does not mean He was absent. It means that pain has a way of narrowing our perception. It means that when we are in the depths of suffering, our capacity to sense and receive and recognize presence, even divine presence, can be significantly diminished. It means that the very seasons when He was most actively present with you may have been the seasons when you were least able to feel it. Not because He withdrew, but because the weight of what you were carrying made it harder to perceive anything beyond the pain itself. And this is why the testimony often only makes sense in retrospect. This is why so many people look back on the hardest season of their life and see evidence of a presence and a provision and a protection that they could not see while they were in it. Because in the middle of it, the pain was too loud. The loneliness was too consuming. The weight was too heavy. And it was only when they came through it and turned around and looked back, that they could see the footprints alongside theirs in the places they thought they were walking alone. They could see the moments when they should not have made it, but they did. And they could finally understand that the making it was not just their own resilience. It was grace accompanying them through something they could not have survived alone. And you made it through things you could not have survived alone. You need to sit with that. There are seasons in your rearview mirror that, if you are honest, you do not fully understand how you survived them. There are moments you came through that, by every natural measure, should have finished you. There are nights you made it to the morning of that you are not sure how you made it to. And the how is Him. The how is a presence that was with you even when you felt most abandoned. Even when your prayers felt like they were hitting the ceiling. Even when the silence of heaven felt indistinguishable from the silence of being completely alone. He was with you in the silence. He was with you in the darkness. He was with you in the confusion and the grief and the disorientation of seasons that made no sense. He was with you when your faith was thin and your hope was smaller than a mustard seed, and you were holding on by something you could not even identify or name. He was with you in the hospital room and in the courtroom and in the bedroom where your marriage was falling apart. He was with you in the moment of the betrayal and in the long aftermath of trying to recover from it. He was with you when you felt invisible and when you felt disqualified and when you felt like the life you had imagined for yourself was so far gone that you could no longer even grieve it properly. You were never as alone as you felt. And that truth is not just meant to comfort you about the past. It is meant to reorient you for the present and the future. Because if He was with you then, in the worst of it, in the deepest of it, in the most hidden and most painful and most isolating moments of your life, then He is with you now, in whatever you are currently carrying that nobody knows about, in whatever silent suffering you walked into this space with today, in whatever you will walk back into when you leave here. He is there. He has always been there. So I need you to take everything we walked through today, and I need you to let it land, not just in your mind, not just as information you received and filed away. I need you to let it land in the place where the pain actually lives, in that room you locked, in that chapter you never read out loud, in that silence you have been suffering in for longer than anybody around you knows. Because today was not just a sermon. Today was God pulling up a chair next to the version of you that you never let anybody see. The tired version, the wounded version, the version that has been holding it together on the outside while quietly falling apart on the inside, and saying, I see you. I have always seen you, not the performance, not the presentation, you. He saw you when nobody else did. He witnessed what nobody else witnessed. He knew the parts you never told. He was present in every moment you felt most alone, and not once, not in the valley, not in the silence, not in the darkest night of your most hidden season. Not once did He look away from you. And I know some of you came in here today, still carrying the weight of feeling unseen, still bruised by the silence of people who should have shown up and didn't, still moving through life with that low, grade ache of having suffered in private for so long that you almost forgot what it felt like to be known. And I want you to know that God sent this word specifically for that ache, specifically for that bruise, specifically for the part of you that has been wondering if anybody at all really sees what this has been costing you. He does. He always has. And His seeing you is not passive. It is active. It is intentional. It is wrapped in a love that does not require you to clean yourself up or edit yourself down or present the highlight reel version before He shows up for you. He shows up for the unedited version. He always has. You were never invisible to heaven. Your pain was never too quiet for Him to hear. Your suffering was never too hidden for Him to find. And you were never, not for one single solitary moment, as alone as you felt. Receive that today, not just with your mind, Let it go all the way down into the places that have been waiting the longest to hear it.